The Information has a story out today analyzing the ways in which Google is trying to get power to all of its new data centers that it is building. One effort to that effect, the company paid $4.8 billion to buy a company called Intersect Power late last year. I want to bring on our finance reporter, Miles Kruppa, to help us understand what this deal will mean for Google and the power challenges at large. Miles, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Akash.
So we were just talking with our friend Raul Martinique over at DataBank earlier in the show about the power bottleneck that these data centers are going to face, possibly. Although he made the point that maybe the chips will get better, and maybe we won't need all the power. But the reality is, Google did this deal to buy this company, Intersect Power. Tell us about what that company does and why they did the deal.
Yeah, intersect power basically creates what they call microgrids for data centers. So they take things like solar panels and batteries, hook them up, put them next to data centers, and make it all work with the existing electrical grid. They're sort of pioneering this new way, what some experts call behind the meter. It's one version of that to sort of power data centers. And so, interestingly, Google had actually been working with Intersect as far back as 2024 and had invested in the company and decided at the end of last year that it was the right time to make a move and buy it.
And when you say behind the meter, so not being an electricity expert here, but the idea here is that anytime you want to build a house or a data center or a factory, you basically tap the electric grid, the public electric grid, to get your power. And now we're at a position where you need private sources of power, essentially. The public infrastructure is not enough, right?
Yeah, exactly. All of the tech companies, as they're embarking on this huge AI data center push, are facing really long wait times to get connected to the local grid, often stretching into 3, 4, 5+ years. So there's a growing sort of bring your own power movement that Intersect is part of. The data centers that Google has been working with Intersect on still rely on the grid in part, but for most of their energy, or even during times of grid stress, they can rely on the solar power and the batteries that they've hooked up to the data centers as well.
Now, the part of your story that really went into detail and you took a closer look at is the regulatory angles to all this. So the fact that hyperscalers, Google is going private for its electricity needs. How does that sit with regulators? Are they happy about this? Are they not? Do they have to get more approvals?
Yeah, it's been a complicated picture for companies trying to do this. Basically, the state of play right now is that the local electricity municipalities basically have a lot of power over how these projects get approved and how they work and whether they're even feasible. And basically, Chris Wright, who's head of the energy department, directed this national energy regulator called FERC to try to unify some of this and make it easier for companies to more quickly hook up AI data centers. And so Google submitted a proposal in November that basically aligned exactly with the kind of work that Intersect is doing. They're proposing that regulators create a fast track 2 to 3 month process for approving data centers that bring their own sources of power. And that regulators favor ones that are able to be flexible when the grid is strained and sort of take some of that load off of the grid at those times. And so, it's clear from the acquisition and from Google's comments that it's thinking about this conundrum in a pretty unified way.
How big an ask is this to ask regulators to speed up the approval for something? Is that something that is common? Is it likely or unlikely that they get this fast tracked approval?
Yeah, well, it's sort of creating a state versus federal tension that's long existed in these
Never
markets.
heard of never heard of that before.
Never happened in any other context. But I think the federal government sees maybe now being the right time to take a bit more control over how this process works and do a bit more central planning. We're sort of waiting to see how FERC responds by April. They've been collecting comments from all the tech companies, consumer advocates, utilities, and so they're going to have to weigh all of that by this April deadline.
And is Google the only company in this situation right now? Are other big hyperscaler companies also doing similar fast tracking type stuff with regulators?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's asking for sort of similar but different things from the regulators. I think they would all like to see things streamlined a bit more. But, there are some companies that don't want to have to sort of curtail their consumption of power from the grid voluntarily, like Google is suggesting it might be willing to do in some circumstances. Certainly none of the companies have gone as far as Google has to actually buy a power company. Many of them are sort of striking these arm's length deals with nuclear developers, hydropower developers. It's sort of a wide range of alternative energy sources people are tapping. So Google seems like it's trying to sort of get out ahead of a lot of these potentially huge changes coming over the next year.
Last question for you, and I don't know if you'll know the answer to this or not, but I know that buying a power company is obviously a way to be vertically integrated and have more control over your costs. When a company decides to go private for their power, uh, is there like is it a going rate for electricity, or can you make it cheaper? Like, can you win on power by being cheaper? Does it depend then on what way you're getting the power in the first place? Like, I'm just wondering what the economics of going private.
Yeah, well, I think maybe another benefit Google sees in this transaction is, yes, to your point, maybe an opportunity to vertically integrate some of this. Google is a big data center developer itself. And so it has these relationships with suppliers. And, if they can sort of uh, make it so that the technology that Intersect was already building for Google can now sort of scale at a lower cost, I think that would be a huge win for the company.
Great. Well, Miles, I want to thank you for coming on. That is Miles Krupa, our finance reporter here at The Information.